Hey, first grade friends, it is me, and I am back with the book that we read a couple weeks ago, Upstairs Mouse and Downstairs Mole. And I have two chapters I'm going to read to you today. But before we do that, it's been, like I said, a couple weeks since we have read this book. So I'm going to remind you of what these characters like to do and who they are. So we have Upstairs Mouse, who lives upstairs in the tree, and Downstairs Mole, who lives in the ground, because that's where moles live. And they are both super, super funny and super kind and super helpful to each other. So the chapters today, the first chapter is called The Invitations. And I thought this chapter would go perfect with your letter writing for Writer's Workshop, because our lesson this week is taking all that opinion and all that things you want, the reasons you wanted to persuade somebody, and actually writing a letter to somebody, persuading them to kind of come to your side and changing their opinion. So this has a really good example of some letter writing in it. So I thought it would be a great read aloud. So it is called The Invitations, and I will show you the picture a little bit closer in just a second. So Mouse found an invitation in her mailbox. It was from her neighbor, Mole. I'm going to show you this up close so that you can kind of pay attention to the parts of a letter, so that when you go to write the letter, you will be ready to go. So the letter says, "Dear Mouse, if you are not too busy, please come join me for lunch to celebrate our new garden. Your neighbor, Downstairs Mole." And if you remember in the previous chapter, they were sweeping out their homes, and they both got dust and dirt inside each other's homes, and then they decided to be helpful and build a garden. So now Mole is writing a letter to Mouse inviting him to celebrate the new garden. So you can see in this letter there's an opening, "Dear Mouse," that's who the letter is to. Then there's some information written in the middle part of the letter. And at the end of the letter, it's called a closing, "Your neighbor, Downstairs Mole." And that's the signature. So there's three parts to a letter. There's an opening where you write who the letter is to. And it usually starts with dear, like "Dear Mouse." There's the middle part, or the body of the letter, where you write your information. And then there's the closing. "Sincerely from," he chose to write "your neighbor," and then his signature, "Mole." So remember that, readers, as you are going to write today your letters to somebody. So let's get going back with the story. So Mole is inviting Mouse to come to the house for a little celebration. Hi, Izzy. Yes, hello. Around noon, there came a tap, tap, tap at Mole's door. "Glad you could make it," said Mole. "Please come in." Mouse had picked dandelions for the occasion. "For you," she said, "until our flowers come up." Mouse looked around the room. "My, but you keep a nice tidy hole," she squeaked. "Thank you," said Mole. So she brought him flowers. Okay, this isn't going to work. Sorry, guys. It was a bit damp inside Mole's hole. Mouse shivered. Mole also kept his place rather dark, as the bright light hurt his eyes. Mouse bumped into the table as she sat down. Bump! Yeah, because if you're thinking anything about the characters, moles live down in the dirt where it's really dark. So Mouse is having a really hard time. It's kind of chilly and it's dark. She's having a hard time seeing. Mole poured a cup of tea for Mouse and one for himself. "I wasn't sure how you liked your worms," said Mole, "so I prepared them two ways. The ones on the right are lightly fried. The ones on the left have not been cooked. Dig in." Mouse took one of each to be polite. So if you're thinking like a reader here, you're thinking that, oh yeah, moles like to eat worms. It makes sense. They live down deep in the dirt. But think about Mouse here. Do mice eat worms? Mole was thinking, yeah, I'll prepare it two ways. I don't know which way she likes it. He's just trying to be a kind, good friend. But think about Mouse. And the author says here, Mouse took one of each to be polite. Do you think she's going to eat the worms? Mole filled his plate. He was starved. Mole crunched. Mole slurped. Mouse poked the worms on her plate. The one on the left wiggled and squirmed. Mouse's stomach began to wiggle and squirm. The one on the right looked greenish-gray. Mouse's face turned greenish-gray. There's your answer right there. We now know that Mouse does not like worms. They're making her feel rather sick. The damp air made her sneeze. Achoo! Goodness, Mouse, said Mole. You do not look well. I don't feel so good, moaned Mouse. Please excuse me, Mole, but I think I'd better go upstairs and lie down. She bumped into the door on her way out. Bump! So Mole's house is not quite great for Mouse. She can't see. She doesn't like the meals. It's a little too cold and damp for her. Let's see what happens next. That evening, Mole found an invitation in his mailbox. Dear Mole, I am feeling much better. Please join me for dinner at 6 o'clock to continue our garden celebration. Your neighbor upstairs, Mouse. I'll show you that up close. So we've got an opening, Dear Mole, the information, and the closing, and the signature. It's from Mouse. Readers, I'd like to pause here for a second. Knowing what you know about what happened downstairs in Mole's hole when Mouse visited, do you think maybe something similar is going to happen when Mole goes upstairs to Mouse's hole? Think about that. At 6 o'clock, there came a tap, tap, tap at Mouse's door. Right on time, said Mouse. Please come in. You are looking much better, said Mole. Thank you, said Mouse. The evening sun poured through the windows in Mouse's house. Mole covered his eyes. He walked smack into a wall. Smack. Oh, look, friends, this also goes with our clocks today. Mr. Minute is pointing straight up to the 12, so that's a clock. And the hour power hand is pointing straight down to the 6. So that means it is 6 o'clock. I'll give you a closer look at that. And look what happened. It's too bright for Mole. So the same thing's happening, but just kind of the opposite. Mole bumped into the table as he sat down. Bump! Mouse poured a cup of tea for Mole and one for herself. I wonder what Mouse is going to serve. If you were thinking cheese, you're right. I was not sure which cheese you preferred, said Mouse, so I cut up 2 kinds. The one on the left is cheddar, and the one on the right is Limburger. Help yourself. To be polite, Mole took a slice of each. Mouse loaded her plate. She was famished. Mouse nibbled. She gnawed. There she is. Look at Mouse. Not quite using her manners. Mole's head was still aching from walking into a wall. He began to wobble in his seat. The bright light over the table hurt his eyes. The strong odor of Limburger cheese made his stomach flip-flop. Plop! Mole toppled right off his chair. Mercy, Mole, squeaked Mouse. Are you okay? Mole groaned. I feel a bit dizzy. Please excuse me, Mouse, but I think I better go downstairs and rest. He bumped into the door on his way out. Bump. Let's see how they solve this problem. So the next chapter is called Kind, Good Neighbors. So let's see, we already know that they're super kind and they're super helpful to each other. So I wonder how they're going to solve this problem about not being able to go in each other's houses. I just have that, I wonder. And I wonder if this is going to be the kind of book that teaches you, how to help others and how to be kind to others. Mole woke up the next morning feeling refreshed. He looked around his tidy hole. How nicely dark and damp it was. Nothing like Mouse's house, which was warm and bright. Suddenly, Mole pictured Mouse shivering. He remembered her sneezing, her bumping into the table, and Mouse smacking into the door. Why, Mouse had not even touched the worms on her plate. Goodness, cried Mole. How selfish of me. He buttoned his jacket and ran outside the door. Bump, achoo! And he said, how selfish of me. So he feels guilty. He's like, I didn't even think about Mouse and what she needed. Mouse washed the dishes in the sink. Rays of sunshine streamed through the kitchen. How bright and cheery things looked. Not at all like Mouse's or Mole's dark hole. Suddenly, Mouse pictured Mole covering his eyes. She remembered Mole walking into the wall, Mole falling off his chair, and Mole bumping into the door. Why, Mole had not even nibbled the cheese on his plate. Mercy me, squeaked Mouse. What a thoughtless neighbor I've been. She zipped her coat and raced out the door. Oh, so they're both realizing, and they're both going outside their doors. Mouse tied a bow on her box and hurried downstairs. Mole finished wrapping his package. He went upstairs to call on Mouse. They bumped into each other outside. Bump. Why, hello, said Mouse to Mole. Hello, said Mole to Mouse. This is for you, said Mole. I hope you don't think me a thoughtless neighbor. Mouse opened the present. There were 2 candles inside the box. Bring them when you visit, said Mole, and my hole will be less dark and damp. Thank you very much, said Mouse. You are a kind neighbor, Mole. Mouse handed Mole her box. I hope I haven't been too selfish of a neighbor. Mole unwrapped the package. Inside were a pair of sunglasses. Wear them when you visit, said Mouse, and my house will not seem so bright. Thank you very much, said Mole. You are such a good neighbor, Mouse. Together they strolled into town for a dessert. Mouse had cheesecake, and as for Mole, a bowl of worms, lightly fried. That cheesecake for Mouse. And look, friends, there's a little fortune at the end of this chapter. So what is the lesson we learned during these 2 chapters with these kind neighbors, these helpful neighbors, these thoughtful neighbors? Let's see what it says. It says, be kind and do nice things for others. What a good lesson to learn. I love when the author teaches you lessons like that. So friends, you can do that in your life. Be kind and do nice things for others. I know you already are. All right, kiddos, I hope you enjoyed this week's read aloud and reminding yourself about those characters. And remember, you're working on your letter writing for writing, and hopefully seeing those invitations from Mouse and Mole helped you organize how your letter's going to go. All right, friends, I will see you later in another lesson. Bye.